Well, welcome everyone to the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences, National Advisory Environmental Health Sciences Council here on June 5th, 2025. This is a virtual meeting only, and I will call things to order. And I need to say that pursuant to the Government in the Sunshine Act, all aspects of this meeting are open to the public except the review, discussion, and evaluation of grant applications and related information. So welcome everyone, and I will turn it over now to Dr. Balshaw. David, turn the virtual podium over to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Rick. And good morning, everyone. Welcome to our open session for our June council meeting. So we'll get started this morning with introducing our council members. And I'll just call on folks in alphabetical order. And our first one, who I don't believe is actually with us yet, is Steph Cormier.
She's there.
We have Steph.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, second is Olivier Deschamps. Can you introduce yourself, please? You're muted.
Sorry, I have a lot of trouble this morning. Good morning, everyone, and it's a pleasure to be joining you today. Olivier Deschamps, Professor of Economics at UC Santa Barbara.
Thank you. And Daryl?
Good morning, everyone. From the great state of Ohio. And that's all I'll say about that, because we are at The Ohio State University. I'm a professor of environmental public health neuroscience here in the Division of Environmental Health Sciences. Good morning.
Thanks, Daryl. Carrie?
Good morning. I'm Carrie Hornbuckle. I'm a professor of civil and environmental engineering at the University of Iowa and director of the Iowa Superfund Research Program.
Thank you, Carrie. Catherine?
I'm Catherine Hoyle. I am a professor in the Department of Biological Sciences at North Carolina State University. Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to be here.
Good morning, Catherine. Gökhan?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Gökhan Mutlu. I'm a professor of medicine and chief of the section of pulmonary and critical care at the University of Chicago.
Thank you, Gökhan. Maria?
Good morning, Maria Savasta Kennedy, clinical professor of law at UNC School of Law, where I teach environmental law, environmental justice, and run environmental justice pro bono projects. Good to see you.
Thank you, Maria. We do have three members of council who are unable to join us today. That's Dr. Tim Greenemeyer from University of Pittsburgh, Dr. Patricia Nez Henderson from the Black Hills, and our ex officio member from the FDA, Dr. Susie Fitzpatrick, are not able to join us today. And then I will move on to our members of the Senior Leadership Committee. So first, Trevor.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Trevor Archer, the Deputy Director at NAEHS. I'm a molecular biologist and biochemist, and I want to join Rick and David in thanking you for your time here. We really appreciate it.
Daryl?
Hi, everybody. I'm Daryl Zeldin. I'm a pulmonary critical care physician scientist. I'm the scientific director for DIR, and I'll join Rick and Trevor and David in thanking everybody for their service.
And Heather? Is Heather with us? And Mike? Mike may not be with us either. And finally, Jay Mathis, I think, is also not with us. So with that, I will move on from introductions into our virtual meeting etiquette. As Rick mentioned, this meeting is being conducted entirely in a virtual format, meaning that we are on a webcast. I think we've all been doing this for a few years now, so we know how to keep our microphones turned off when not speaking, keep our cameras off when not needed to preserve bandwidth, stay off VPN. We will be using the raise hand function, although Nathan, it looks like that is still grayed out in my Teams. We'll be using that both to call on people in discussion and also for our voting during the meeting. So everyone, if we can figure out how to get that reactivated, that would be very helpful. There will be times during our discussion when council members will need to be absent from discussions. This is going to be in the closed session due to conflict of interest reasons. We have a green room in the Teams, and so we will be able to manually move you from the live Teams into the green room, and then bring you back when that matter, the discussion of that matter has concluded. Any members of the public who wish to express views regarding any items that we are discussing during the open session may do so by sending an email to myself, Ashley, and Valerie at the council web on the council webpage, the national.advisory.council@niehs.nih.gov email address. And we will be monitoring that throughout the meeting today. As I said, we will be doing voting through a show of hands. Hopefully we'll have that working in Teams. Otherwise, we'll just monitor it on the Teams cameras. Moving on to the review of confidentiality and conflict of interest. So I'll just read the statement. Policies and procedures for preventing conflict of interest and maintaining confidentiality of grant materials are contained in the conflict of interest forms, which have been emailed to you by Ms. Valerie Bartlett, which states, this certifies that in the review of applications or projects conducted by the National Advisory Environmental Health Sciences Council on June 5th, 2025, I absented myself and I did not participate in the discussion of nor vote on any applications or projects in which I, or to my knowledge, my spouse, minor child, or close professional associates have a financial interest, nor on any applications or projects from an organization or institution where I am an employee, consultant, officer, director, or trustee, am negotiating for employment, or otherwise have a financial interest. In council actions in which we voted on a block of applications or projects without discussing any individual one, the on-block actions, my vote did not apply to any applications from any institution fulfilling the criteria in the preceding paragraph. Members of council should sign the certification and email them to Valerie today. So our first action for consideration today, and our first vote today will be the consideration of the previous meeting minutes. So we have to do this in open session, although the minutes have already been approved offline. So council members have been given access to the meeting minutes from both our September 2024 and April 2025 meetings in the electronic council book. They can be found on the council information page on the agenda tab if you scroll down below the agenda itself. So first, I would like to begin with our minutes from the October meeting and see if there's any discussion or ask for an application to accept the minutes for the October council meeting. Is there any discussion of the October council meeting minutes? Are people finding them in the ECB? And may I have a motion to accept the minutes if there's no discussion?
So moved.
So moved. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Maria. And a second from Daryl.
Mm-hmm.
And if council members, Nathan, the raise hands function is still muted out. Although Carrie is able to do it. So that's good. Daryl, Catherine, Olivier.
It seems to be selectively working at the moment. We're troubleshooting, but if you have to raise your hand, please turn your camera on and just use the old school raise your physical hand if you need to, if your raise hand feature is not working at the top of your menu bar.
Okay. And it looks like we have concurrence. And then also for our April council minutes. Very short and sweet since that was a closed session only meeting. Any discussion? So before you vote, can I have a motion to accept?
So moved.
Thank you, Maria. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Carrie. And if council members could please vote, all those in favor of accepting. Excellent. Thank you all. And then I will turn it back over to Rick.
Okay, so this is, I guess we're now moving into my presentation. Is that correct, David? Okay, if we
That's
could
correct.
pull up my slides. So thank you very much for Nathan and others for projecting the slides. So I just want to double check everyone can hear me okay? Oh, not a good sign. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. We can.
Okay, great, good. Okay, so before I begin my presentation, I just want to emphasize to everyone who's listening on council and has been listening in, I want to emphasize how complicated things have been, especially over the past several months. So we've faced many challenges to managing the Institute. Given the priorities of the new administration, and look, this always happens when there's a new administration. So there are new priorities, and we have to implement those new priorities. So additionally, though, we've experienced quite a number of reduction in force for some of the key staff. And this is across several of the divisions. And there have been plans to reorganize NAEHS and the NIH with extremely challenging timelines, although the details on that are still emerging. So most notably, these new priorities have substantially impacted our ability to get grants out the door. So we've lost key staff in DERT, a number of really key staff in DERT. This has meant that the remaining staff have had to work long hours and really to do things, extraordinary things, to actually continue to keep the grant review process and the grant issuing process going. So these delays have also led to our ability our inability to actually conduct study sections and to review grant proposals within NAEHS, and this has been a huge challenge. So I want to thank the council members for their service and their patience with the council process. And I also want to thank everyone in our grantee and our stakeholder community for understanding, for your understanding as we tackle these complex challenges around how we operate. David's going to provide a lot more of the details on how these challenges have really impacted our ability to issue grants and to get money out the door. So as you know, we had to move our February council meeting to April, and we had to hold the council meeting as a closed session only. So we're thankful to council members for your flexibility. So this allowed us to complete a second level review for applications that were originally slated for the February meeting. So for council members and for the public, please know that the NIH and NAEHS are making awards as expeditiously as possible. So we're also facing new challenges, given the increasing need to conduct the necessary due diligence to ensure all research proposals that are ultimately awarded are aligned with the new administration's priorities. This has taken considerable time and effort on the part of the staff across NIEHS, most notably David, his colleagues within DERT. So for today's open session of council, NIEHS staff will not be able to discuss the status of any specific applications with respect to grant compliance, application status termination, appeal status, etc. Additionally, NIEHS staff will not be able to discuss any items related to pending or ongoing litigation. So finally, please know that, please know that David and I, together with the staff across DERT, we are working tirelessly to get the funding that we have been appropriated from Congress out the door and into the laboratories across the environmental health sciences community to conduct the work that will advance human health and well-being. That's all consistent with our strategic plan. Now, as it relates to funding, so let me start my presentation with an update on the funding that we currently have and what was released last week, and what the funding projections are for FY26 in the President's budget. So let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, well, so here we are. This is the typical diagram that I use for funding. And so we had, starting off with where we were in FY23. Hold on one second here. Let me turn off these. Getting a number of things coming in here. I'm still figuring out Teams. So in FY23, you show the enacted budget. We were just north of $1 billion. In FY24 enacted, it was flat essentially from what we have for the most part. A little cut in the Superfunded Worker Training Program, and we were concerned that it was flat. But as we're learning now, that flat is actually good in the current fiscal climate. So for the FY25 enacted, we are flat from FY24. And although we haven't heard anything officially, but there is chatter happening within the news media about rescissions that could be happening for the FY25 enacted budget, but we just don't know. So the concern is shown all the way on the right. This is the FY26 President's budget that was released last week. It shows, I think it's about a 35% reduction in both the labor HHS allocation from 913 to 594. And it's $1 million, as well as a reduction from 79.7 for the Superfund and Worker Training Program to 51.8. So this is a concern. Next slide. And released also with the President's budget last week was language around a proposed reorganization, an HHS reorganization that would impact NAEHS. Specifically, there was language to move NAEHS out of the NIH into a new proposed agency called the Administration for a Healthy America, or AHA, or AHA. So this would be part of NIHS would be part of the environmental health account with NIOSH and other parts of the CDC. So additionally, AHA combines the work of the assistant or the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Health, or OASH. It would also combine the efforts of the HRSA, the Health Resources and Services Administration, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, or SAMHSA, and several centers and programs formerly in the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Now, given the budget projections as well as this proposed reorganization, look, all I can tell you is that the White House and OMB are proposing these, proposing to move NIHS to the AHA and to trim its budget by approximately 35%. But I need to remind ourselves, as well as reminding everyone on council and in our community, our stakeholder community, that this is a proposal by the White House and OMB. And it's not final until we know what Congress will do. So the NIH and I, together with members of the senior leadership team, are actively engaged in meetings to provide the type of input to the policymakers that will ultimately help to shape the final proposals on this topic. So I think the bottom line here is that we have to wait to see what will happen in Congress. So let's see here. Let me get rid of this note. This is broadcast. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So there have been a number of things that have happened since the last time we met. We had an open session. Probably one of the most notable things is that we now have a new secretary for HHS. So Secretary Robert Kennedy. The good news about Kennedy being the secretary is that we now have a secretary of HHS who is very specifically addressing the things that NIEHS is all about. In his opening remarks, his comments to HHS staff, he talked about, getting to the root causes of America's chronic disease crisis, and specifically referring to environmental toxins and poor diets, that these are the things that are integral to the way that we work at NAEHS. He's also talking about promoting clean water and air initiatives. So I think this is really good news that we have someone at the helm at HHS who really appreciates the work that we do, and I think is very interested in making sure that we integrate the work that NAEHS does into the fabric of the way that we study chronic disease across HHS. So next slide. We also have a new NIH director. So when Dr. Bhattacharya first met with the IC directors, soon after he was approved in early April, we had an IC directors meeting. He went across the board, we all introduced ourselves. And when it came to me, he was very interested, especially interested in the work that we do at NIEHS, and committed to, at some point when his schedule allows, coming to visit us at NIEHS. So at that first meeting, he actually laid out a vision that had three really integral components, which is to improve public health and to prevent, to treat, and to cure chronic diseases. I think he, as well as Secretary Kennedy, are very concerned about the increasing incidence of type 2 diabetes, increasing incidence of obesity. There are things that he feels that the NIH can be doing differently going forward to help improve public health. He also is very passionate about the issue of ensuring that we have reliable results, so that when NIH supported investigators publish their work, that these are replicable, reproducible, and generalizable. And he's also very interested in making sure that the work that's supported at the NIH is really cutting edge. He wants to invest in innovation, embrace new technologies, new ideas, and new approaches to old problems. And I think that NIEHS is very well positioned to really meet some of the expectations that he has. Let's go to the next slide. And very specifically, soon after he became director, he made the commitment to meet with individual IC directors. And I was one of the first ones that he met with. I was very encouraged. As I walked in the room, he stood up, he walked over, shook my hand, and indicated that he was very excited to have this opportunity to talk with me about the work at NIEHS, to meet me in person. And I think I took the opportunity to, it's supposed to be a 30-minute meeting. It actually went to 50 minutes. And finally, his assistant came in the room and said, Jay, you need to get out of here because you and Rick need to be at an IC directors meeting in 10 minutes. But he's very enthusiastic. I took him through the elements of the strategic plan, very interested in improving public health, making big advances, as I indicated in the previous slide. And he's very excited about the whole gene by environment interactions. He is a big proponent of the Exposome initiative. In fact, many of you may remember that Dr. Bhattacharya was a co-author on that 2010 paper, which talked about really getting beyond one exposure at a time and doing EWAS experiments. So I think that we have an NIH director now who is very supportive of the work at NIEHS. Let's go to the next slide. Now, I've been spending a lot of my time over the past several weeks, getting out and talking about NIEHS and describing the work that we do, so that there's no misunderstanding about what we do or don't do. And so I've had a great reception. In fact, we now have at the NIH a Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Eric Schnabel. In fact, at that first IC directors meeting, he was there together with Jay, and he indicated in his opening remarks that if anyone's interested in coming to talk with me, let me know. I actually went almost immediately thereafter and went to talk with him. And I talked with him about the work that we do at NIEHS, and he was very interested. I said, well, if you're so interested, why don't you come to visit? Well, he did. And a couple of weeks later, we were very pleased that he spent an entire day with us. So Jay Mathis, our executive officer, and her staff within the Office of Management coordinated that visit. So we talked not only about some of the operational issues that he's very interested in around security and safety, infrastructure, conducting routine things, and commitment to professionalism and discipline. But we also took him through some of our cores. And as you can see here, he's very interested. Here's a guy involved in operations, but we discovered that he's an expert embryo microinjectionist. So he was really very interested in this. We also took him to visit our cryo-EM facility to really emphasize and help him to appreciate that we are doing absolutely cutting-edge basic science in support of environmental health and the NIH mission. So it was a great visit, and we really appreciate the time that he took. And I've been back in touch with him, talking about the great things. And in fact, at the end of his visit, he talked about how he was so impressed with many of the things we do here that he's going to take these and actually use these as examples and how we can operationalize things across the NIH. So it was a great visit. I think we got a wonderful supporter in Mr. Schnabel. Next slide. Now, I've also been taking every opportunity that I can find to actually get the word out, to actually get in front of different people at HHS to help them understand what we do. And so it turns out that Stephanie Herodopoulos, who is the acting chief of staff in the Office of the Surgeon General, contacted me. And she had read this wonderful article about Alison Motzinger-Reif's work on polyexposure scores. This was an article that was written by our staff within the environmental factor, Jesse Safran and his colleagues. So I'll get to that in just a second, but they really worked to develop this wonderful article. And so she was very interested in learning more about this and was very interested in Alison's work that demonstrated that the polyexposure score, factoring some of the elements of the exposome, this polyexposure score is more predictive of disease outcomes than polygenic scores. In fact, if you add the two of them up now, it even gets you closer to the finish line. So she was so interested in the exposome concept that we invited her to the exposome moonshot that happened a few weeks ago, and I'll get to that in a couple of minutes. So she attended, and when she was there, she said, "Rick, you're in Washington. How about if you and Dr. Motzinger-Reif come to visit to me and meet some of the staff at OASH?" And we did. And it was a fabulous meeting. So it was an opportunity for us to get the word out across, both the chief, the Surgeon General, as well as the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Health. So that there was a great reception. They're very interested in the work that we do. In fact, following up on that meeting, she indicated that there's a lot of interest in mitochondrial biology. And apparently Secretary Kennedy wants to know more about this. So we invited Dr. Janini Santos to give a presentation to Dr. Herodopoulos and her colleagues, and that went exceptionally well. So we're continuing to get the word out about what we do. Next slide. So let me just briefly end with a few updates here on where we are relative to staff. Next slide. So I think I mentioned last time, but if not, I just need to acknowledge that Dr. Janet Hall retired from federal service in March after 10 years as the clinical director here at NIHS. She did a fabulous job, brought a wonderful vision to our clinical program, which then set up our current clinical director, Dr. Mike Fessler. To continue to provide this leadership for our clinical program. So he began his career at NIHS as a tenure track investigator in the intramural research program in 2006. So he served as the chief of the Immunology, Inflammation, and Disease Laboratory, IIDL, since 2018. Received his MD from Harvard Medical School in 1996. We're just delighted to have Mike at the helm for our clinical program. Next slide. And after almost 20 years of service, actually more than 20 years of service, Christine Flowers, the director of our OCPL, retired on February 28th. So we really appreciate all of the leadership that she's brought to our communications programs. While she's departing, Jesse Safran has taken on the role as the acting director of OCPL. Jesse is doing a fabulous job. He received his JD from the University of Baltimore School of Law. And he's been with NAEHS for almost 6 years, worked very closely with Christine, and he's bringing just remarkable leadership to OCPL. So thanks, Jesse, for everything that you're doing. Next slide. Also, after over 41 years of service, Dr. Gwen Coleman is decided to step down as the director of scope. She retired from federal service, recently retired from federal service. So we're just really appreciative. And I'm personally appreciative of much of the vision and the capabilities that she brought to the Institute. So thank you, Gwen, for everything you've done. And once again, under the collaboration, Gwen has worked very closely with Nicole Gabarini, who has assumed the role as the director of scope. So Nicole brings a strong background in policy and coordination from across the NIH to scope. Nicole has been just terrific to work with. So thank you for all of the leadership, Nicole, that you're bringing to the scope office. Next slide. And Dr. Nicole Kleinstrauer was selected as the new acting NIH Deputy Director for Program Coordination, Planning, and Strategic Initiatives. It's a program within the Office of the Director at the NIH. It's called DPCIPSI. So this oversees, many different, cross NIH programmatic research and strategy policy initiatives, including managing the NIH Common Fund. So there are lots of things that are happening: women's health, data science, AIDS research, et cetera. So it's a big responsibility. So congratulations to Nicole for being selected as the acting director of this program. We're hoping that would actually slip into a permanent director, but we'll have to see. But Nicole is previously served as the director of NICEDM and the executive director of ICVAM at NIEHS and the National Toxicology Program. So we're just delighted that she was selected for this remarkable role. So she's actually migrating some of the activities from the DTT relating to NICEDM and ICVAM into the Office of the Director at the NIH. And we think that will go quite well. So congratulations, Nicole. Next slide. And just a few more comments here that, these are the areas of research focus. I don't have time to go into all of these, but next slide, or just click again. So there is an initiative that really focuses on delivering on the mechanistic biology and toxicology, as well as the computational biology and data science. Next slide. I want to call to your attention that there is now a research opportunity announcement, or ROA, relating to the Autism Data Science Initiative. This is an area of great interest to the new Secretary Kennedy. It has 4 different strategic aims. And I think the key part here is using the considerable data that exists in various data repositories relating to ASD. And if the data doesn't exist, there are also opportunities to generate new data, especially data that we can generate using the new NAMS approaches. And it's really to advance our understanding and hopefully come to a better understanding of what are some of the issues that are the root causes of the increased incidence of ASD, especially over the last several years. There'll be about $50 million that are available from the Office of the Director. And this will be allocated in $5 million increments for 24 to 36 months per award. 10 to 25 projects are anticipated to be funded. It's going to be run out of Nicole Kleinstrauer's office, and Nicole has been really leading the initiative and providing essentially executive guidance on this. The application is due quickly. So if you're interested, I encourage you to take a look at the ROA. The application deadline is June 27th. So next slide. And again, with the exposome, just a few more things here. So let's go click again, please. So I just want to remind everyone that we at NIEHS took the initiative, the leadership, David Belshaw, Yusha Shui, and others, to reach out to several other institutes and centers shown in the lower right-hand corner to cobble together the necessary money to support the NEXUS, the Network for Exposomics in the United States. So this award was back in September of 2024. It went to Columbia, Harvard, and the University of Southern California. And the overall goal of the center is to build a global community of practice for cooperation and collaboration and coordination with the European Human Exposome Network. It's all about developing the framework for operationalizing the exposome. Next slide. So one advance happened. You'll see Gary Miller there in the front row, together with Michelle Bennett, who was the coordinator with Gary, and there were other key leaders in the global community in exposomics. They met at the Banbury Center at Cold Spring Harbor in December of 2023. Next slide. And the idea was to develop essentially a definition of the exposome. So I want to call your attention to a publication that came out just a few weeks ago. It was from the Banbury Exposomics Consortium with Miller et al. And these were all the participants in that Banbury conference. It was published in Science magazine, and it really defines the elements of the global exposome project. It ends, that article ends. This is the actually a figure you're seeing here from that article, and the article ends with life exists at the interface of genetically encoded processes and environmentally driven realities. So too should the biomedical enterprise that studies it. So I encourage you to take, if you haven't already, take a look at that article. I think it's terrific, and it really sets the course for how the world community can be working in an exposomics framework. Next slide. So as part of that, following up, there was the exposome moonshot that happened in just a couple of weeks ago in Washington, D.C. at the Bloomberg Center. And there was a lot of discussion in the, I think there were, David was one of the co-organizers, Nicole Kleinstrauer and Thomas Hartung, and many other, Gary Miller. I mean, brought together the global community to really start working on some of the operational details of what can we do with the exposome. So that was a highly successful meeting. You'll be hearing more from David and from others about where are we going with this. Next slide. And my last slide here is that there were a number of objectives that came out of this, is really to launch the Human Exposome Project, set the foundation for the Human Exposome Initiative. I guess we're moving away from project to the Human Exposome Initiative. Characterize the exposures over the life course, develop new technologies, elucidate gene by environment mechanisms, et cetera, et cetera. So it's, I encourage you to take a look at exposomemoonshot.org if you want more details. So next slide, and I think that's it. So thank you all for this opportunity to update you, and you'll be hearing more about some of the details and the challenges that David and I have been working on together with DERT staff. It's been a complicated time. Okay, David, I think we open it up for some Q&A.
Yep, we have just a few minutes for Q&A with council. If individuals can use the raise hand function if you have questions for Rick.
Okay, let's see.
Maria,
I knew you were getting ready to raise your hand. I could tell from your body language. Okay.
Well,
go ahead, Maria. You got a question?
I just wanted to say a heartfelt thank you to you and David and the entire staff for the incredible work that you're doing to keep the work of this program going. So thank you so much. It sounds, I don't know what else you could have done. It just sounds like you've put in a tremendous amount of work and it's paying off. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Well, Maria, thank you for that. And it's, as I indicated in my opening remarks, just thank you all for understanding. It's been a complicated time, but I've been working tirelessly the staff across NAEHS, and especially the staff in DERT, have really risen to the challenges and working tirelessly on behalf of all of you to get the money out the door and get the grants out the door. So my thanks to the staff. They're just doing a fabulous job. So thanks, Maria. Any other comments or questions? So Daryl, I see your hand is up. You're from that Ohio place, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, I echo those sentiments.
Good for you.
As well. But wanting you to get a little bit more granular as much as you can with regard to how you foresee the money coming out the door. For an example, particularly within Nexus and some of these other initiatives. Second part of that question would be, now clearly I think that we probably are in a good position with respect to working with under AHA auspices from several vantage points. We can talk about that a little later, but when can we expect a little bit more information as it relates to what's coming down the pike and how we position ourselves to take advantage of this opportunity, as I see it?
Well, Daryl, thanks for that question, and that's a great question. It's one that I'm asking continuously. It's a challenging time. There are interests. Again, this happens with every new administration. There are interests to change things, and we're faced with the timelines to change things that are really challenging to figure out how do we operate, especially in the context of having rift of several key people. So it's a challenge. To answer your question, as I indicated at the beginning of my presentation, we have to wait to see what Congress has to say about all this. These are the proposals that came out from the president last week. And, I've been working together with senior leadership at the NIH, and the advice that I'm getting is that we need to be patient. We need to see where Congress, how they weigh in on this. Mm-hmm. And these are the proposals that are coming in from the new administration, the president's budget. So we'll have to see. If it actually does come to pass, you can imagine that a 40% reduction in our budget is going to have huge implications for how the NAEHS, and it's not just NAEHS, this is across the board of several ICs across the board. And you may have also read in some of that guidance that there are several ICs that are targeted to be eliminated, and there is consolidation efforts. But lots of things that are underway right now, and I'm not driving the process. IC directors are not driving the process. We have to wait to see where Congress weighs in on this. I know, David Belshaw, anything that I said that was not correct, or anything you want to add to that comment?
No, just to underscore that, I know the concerns about getting awards out the door. We are doing everything that we possibly can. I'll talk about this a little bit in my presentation, but we are working tirelessly to try to get as many awards out the door as quickly as we possibly can.
And just one more quick
remind me, what was the first part of your question? I think I answered the second part of your question. What was the first part again? Just remind me.
No, you did. You touched on it. I'm satisfied with that. But if you could just briefly, as it relates to these institutes that are, I won't say marked for elimination, but we don't see them in the budget. And so might it be that some of the strategic goals of those ICs might migrate to other ICs?
Well, unfortunately, Daryl, I have no specific information on what the plan would be, and I'm sorry. I could speculate, but my speculating isn't very helpful because it's empty speculation. So right. we're not getting any definitive guidance on this, and so much of this is being driven not by leadership within the NIH. So it's these are interesting times with a number of different challenges for those of us in leadership positions at the ICs. So again, my recommendation is keep a very careful eye on what happens. Our NIH director will be defending the budgets to Congress next week, and we'll then have to see how different members of Congress actually weigh in on what they feel the priorities should be for the NIH.
Thank you.
Okay. And again, I just apologize that I can't be more specific and more granular. It just this is what I know. Okay. Other comments or questions? Okay. Well, let's see, David, how are we doing on timing here? I think
I think it is time for us to move on to my presentation.
Okay, let's turn it over to you.
Righty, let me share and make sure, Nathan, that this is coming through cleanly.
Yep, we've got it.
Awesome. Okay, so just a report from the Division of Extramural Research and Training. Most of this is content that I actually had intended to present at our February meeting, updated a little bit with new information as we have proceeded through the fiscal year. So this is a fairly formulaic presentation today. I have some required business that I need to cover. The first is our standard staffing updates. We'll have 2 votes during the course of my presentation. The first is on the council standard operating procedure and the council delegated authorities. We also will be bringing the triennial report on human subjects inclusion to council for a vote to accept. I'll do my required report out on our fiscal year 2024 grants budget wrap up, and then a relatively brief discussion of our fiscal year 2025 funding strategies, which is still a little bit of a work in progress, even though we are past the halfway point of the year, entering the fourth quarter of the year. And then just close up with a very brief discussion of some of the work that the DIRT staff have been doing other than getting grants out the door, and also some highlights from our grantee community, just a couple of words to recognize. So beginning with the staffing updates, and I just want to begin this by saying our division has been very deeply impacted by not only our normal attrition staff who have made the decision to wind their careers up and move into retirement, staff who have taken opportunities for other career paths, but also staff who have taken advantage of the so-called fork in the road, or what we call the deferred resignation program, the voluntary earlier retirement or voluntary separation incentive pay that you may have seen about in the staff. We have also been affected by the reduction in force, as Rick alluded to earlier, as well as some of the centralization efforts and the termination of the probationary employees. And I'll cover all of that in my presentation here, but to lay this in a frame of reference, DERT began the year with 93 approved FTEs and full staffing of 85 employees. Through all of those changes, we are currently sitting at 57 employees. So we have been very deeply impacted by the staffing changes. So starting with our departures. Within my office, the office of the division director, we've had 3 employees who've moved into retirement. That's Helena Bonner, Trish Castranio, and Angie Sanders. And 2 employees who've moved on to other opportunities. Nicole Popovich, just before the change of administration, left us for the Centers for Disease Control, and Lakeisha Wade moved into other opportunities that presented outside the government. Our grants management branch, many of you probably have interacted with Lisa Edwards over the years. She was a team lead in our grants management branch, and she made the decision at the end of last year to move into retirement at the end of January. And we wish her all the best as she moves forward into that new chapter. In our Genes, Environment, and Health branch, Osterd Haugen also retired at the end of 2024, and Kim McAllister retired earlier this spring. In our worker training branch, Gary Johnson retired at the end of 2024, and Kathy Allmark also chose to retire this spring. In our population health branch, a new employee that I didn't get the chance to introduce to you. She was not a probationary employee, but Caitlin Lawrence, who is a program officer, who joined us in January from the Division of Intramural Research, decided this spring to take advantage of another career path that opened up to her, and so she also departed us. She was a rock star for the few months that she was here. I also want to acknowledge, and Rick already told you about Gwen's retirement. There are a couple, staff that we kind of consider to be honorary members of DERT. Gwen, of course, was the division director for 10 years, and before that, she was a branch chief and a program officer. So much of her 41-year federal career was spent in DERT, and she has undoubtedly left a lasting impact on who we are and what we do as a division. Also, Benigno Benny Encarnacion, who worked in DERT for many years as a grants management specialist, and maybe 10 to 15 years ago, he moved into our financial management branch. And some of you may have interacted with him, but probably every one of you who has gotten a grant has been impacted by the work that Benny has done, as he is the person who has managed our financial accounts for the Institute. And both Gwen and Benny will be sadly missed by DERT. I also want to acknowledge that we had 4 program officers who were impacted by the termination of the probationary employees. I believe that I did get to introduce Sadika Satala to council in our October meeting, but 3 other program staff joined us after our October council. That's Justin Bollinger, who worked in the Gene Environment and Health branch, Stephanie Kim, who worked in our Population Health branch, and Lydia Lewis, who worked in my office, in the office of the division director. Many of you are probably aware of the efforts to consolidate all of NIH's scientific review activities within the Center for Scientific Review. And at the end of May, the majority of our staff in our scientific review branch began details working for CSR. So they're still technically NIEHS employees, DERT employees, but their work will be overseen by CSR going forward. That's Leroy, our chief of scientific review, Lorna Daniel, who's one of our program specialists, Beverly Duncan and Murali Ganesan, who are at SROs. Deborah Jones, who actually chose to retire earlier this spring rather than move to CSR, and then Varsha Shukla, who is an SRO and the deputy branch chief, have all moved on to CSR. I think many of you will probably interact with them. I think they will probably be conducting the reviews for many of our research grants going forward. And we wish them all the best as they move into that role. I also want to acknowledge that the program analysis branch was one of the groups that was eliminated during the reduction of force. So Christy Drew, Arsha, Gerald, Mbeja, Carolina, Susie, Christy Pettibone, and Tiara Tucker are all in limbo as the RIF moves forward. We're wishing them all the best during these trying times as well. So that's a lot of departures, 29 total departures from the division since the beginning of the year. Well, actually since October Council, but most of those are since the beginning of the year. We do have one new staff member who has joined DERT since our October Council, who's still with us, and that's not a stranger to many of you. You know Dr. Aubrey Miller, who worked in the Scope office while Gwen was the director of Scope, and with her retirement, we made the decision that many of Aubrey's activities, his leadership of the Disaster Research Response Program, and his leadership of the NIH Extreme Weather Events and Natural Disasters Program really align more with the activities that we have in DERT. So he has joined DERT as the senior medical advisor to me as the division director. Aubrey is no stranger to most of us. He is a board certified physician in occupational environmental medicine. And retired, I think, probably 5 or 6 years ago as a captain from the U.S. Public Health Service Commission Corps. So we're excited to have Aubrey in the division and really look forward to working with him for years to come. With that, I will move on to our first voting action, which is our council standard operating procedure and the council delegated authorities for fiscal year 2025. So the council as SOP, as you will, is a documentation, a written documentation of the advisory council procedures. So this is something that we are expected to do. We've always done this as an understanding. So we're not actually changing any of our policies or procedures relating to the operation of council. We're simply codifying this in a written document that we are presenting to council in the ECB for your approval. And along with that council SOP, we're also presenting our annual update to the council delegated staff actions. So these are a series of actions that by policy would be presented to council for review and approval. But these are relatively routine actions that we ask council to delegate those authorities to our staff so that we can make those changes in between council meetings to expedite that work. We are not proposing any changes to the delegated actions this year. We're maintaining this the same as it has been for, I think, 3 years now without any change. And this gives staff authority to do 5 things that would normally be council's required council action. The first of those is to process a change of institution. So this is when a PI moves from one grantee institution to another. The original grantee agrees to move their funding along with them. A Type 7 application for those following the actions, and this just allows staff to review and approve those without having to bring it to council. Similar to that, when there's a change of PI, so either if the grantee institution does not allow the grant to move with the individual, or that individual leaves the project for whatever reason, whether that's retirement, health issues, or just a change in career, this allows us to designate a new PI or approve the designation of a new PI for that project. We also ask for authority to continue a grant with an interim PI. So the most common case for this is for a faculty member who takes a sabbatical where they're going to be away from the project for a number of months, or an individual a case where the PI has a severe health issue that they are not going to be able to continue to operate in the role of the PI on a short-term basis. So this is an interim principal investigator. There are those 3 generally do not impact the funding of the project significantly. Change of institution will change F&A rates, but there's usually relatively little change in the funding associated with those 3. There are 2 where we are looking at funding. So the first is an extension of a grant without funds. So the most common case here is a no-cost extension at the end of the project. So this allows them to use their unobligated funds, their carryover balance, to continue to complete the work and wrap up. And then in relatively rare cases, we will also support an extension closeout of the project with a need for new funds. So we will do a what we call a with cost extension. So an extension of that project with typically that's a relatively modest amount of funding that is needed to complete the aims of the project. To ensure an orderly closeout. With that, I will ask council if there's any discussion on the SOP or the council delegated authorities, and so see if there's any questions or comments on these two. It's one document with two pieces. Seeing no hands, hearing no questions, I will call for a motion to approve the SOP and CDA.
So moved.
Thank you, Daryl. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Catherine. And if council members could vote with the raise hand function. To approve, that is. Excellent. Thank you all. So our next voting action this morning is the consideration of the triennial report certifying compliance with NIH policy on human subjects inclusion guidelines. So this is a requirement stemming from the 2016 21st Century Cures Act. So the Cures Act, as it is colloquially known, was an effort to accelerate advances in medical innovation and provide access to those advances to the patients who need them. Within many stipulations of the Cures Act is a requirement that NIH, as an organization, as an agency, report every 3 years on our human subjects inclusion across all of the studies that are supported by the agency. This requires an analysis of the inclusion by sex, race, and ethnicity for all NIH-defined phase 3 and applicable clinical trials. It also requires a report out of enrollment by age across the lifespan as part of the inclusion across the lifespan policy. So the inclusion data that is included in your electronic council book, the report includes all of the human subjects efforts that we have in both domestically at U.S. sites as well as in our non-U.S. or foreign sites. Those are combined, as well as data from both our extramural activities as well as our intramural activities. The data are reported as inclusion enrollment records, or IERs. And individual studies can and almost, in most cases, do have more than one inclusion report per study that deals with individual subpopulations of their effort. So, for instance, mothers and caregivers in a study looking at mother-child pairs are reported as separate inclusion reports for that study. Again, this data only includes reports on prospective studies. So studies that are using existing data are not included within the triennial report. With that, and again, council members have access to the inclusion report in your electronic council book. I'm going to ask if there's any discussion of the report. Any questions or comments on the inclusion? Hearing none, I would like to call for a motion to approve the triennial report.
So moved.
Thank you, Maria. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Catherine. And if council members could use the raise hand function, those in favor of accepting the report. And thank you all. It looks like we have a unanimous vote. Now, changing gears. So I'm required in our February council member meeting to come back to council and report on our previous year grant funding. So this is our 2024 fiscal 24 budget wrap-up report. So in fiscal 24, NAEHS received a total of 1,414 applications that were reviewed. That resulted in the release of 285 competing awards, most of which are in the research project grants, and we'll go into much more detail on that later. But also included a number of grants in our other research activities, including career awards, our SBIR and STTR requirements, our training grants and individual fellowships, and also our research centers. The average cost of our RPGs was ticked up just a little bit in fiscal 24. The average competing award was $452,000, and our average non-competing award was $520,000. Throughout fiscal 2024, we had a set pay line at 7th percentile for our investigator-initiated R01, R03, and R21 grants. And we'll discuss that a little bit coming forward, that I know that there's some concern from the community about that 7% number, but that does not actually impact the number of awards that are made from the Institute. And the NAEHS success rate, despite that 7% pay line, for R01s was 13.8%. And for RPGs as a whole was 16.3%. Those are both slightly higher than they were in fiscal 2023. So looking at our trends in success rates, so this is the RPG success rate over the last 10 years, you can see that NAEHS's success rate, that's the total number of applications funded divided by the total number of applications reviewed in the year. So it's not the same thing as a funding rate per se. It's hovered around 15th percentile and a few times has ticked up into the 16 to 17% range. But for the most part, we've been hovering right around 15%. Comparing that to NIH's success rate in total, you can see that we've always lagged slightly behind the NIH levels. NIH averaging probably closer to a 20 percentile or a 20% success rate over the years. But actually in fiscal year 24, I think we were probably closest to the NIH average that we've ever been. But I do want to acknowledge that 16.3% success rate is on the lower end of NIH institutes. I think we are the second or third lowest success rate across NIH. So looking at our distribution of extramural grants, so our total grant funding. So this is just for our HHS portfolio. So this does not include our interior appropriation supporting Superfund research program and worker training. We'll discuss those in a few minutes. This also does not include our TAPs. We pay about $5 to $6 million a year to NIH from our grants budget for support for the activities of our utilization of CSR and OER for our programs. Those are not included here. But you can see that about 2/3 of our budget goes into our research project grants. It's a total of 284 of the $445 million. A large chunk goes to our centers, $73 million, about 16% of our budget. And I do want to clarify that this report does include the appropriations to support our health effects of weather program. So that is included within this. That's the uptick in the centers this year. About 5% of our budget, 4.8% of our budget goes to our training activities, both our individual fellowships as well as our institutional training grants. We are required by statute to put 5.1% of our budget into SBIR and STTR research. So that works out to about $23 million annually. And then about $44 million goes to our other research. That's career development activities, our conference grants, our short-term training, our cohort maintenance program, the HERE program, those kinds of activities. Many of our data repositories are supported by the other research. That's largely infrastructure programs that are not funded as centers. And we'll talk about that again in a minute. So focusing in on that $284 million that goes into our research project grants, almost exactly 75% of that RPG budget is in the R01 mechanism. That's NIH's bread and butter research mechanism that you're aware of. A significant chunk of our research project grant goes to our river program. It's about 5% of our total grant budget for the R35 mechanism. And that is now past R21s as our second largest expenditure within the RPG mechanism. So R21s are innovative exploratory research grants are about $16 million. The R00 conversions from a K99 is about $9 million. We did have an uptick in 2024 of our expenditures in R56s. So these are the so-called Shannon Awards that allow us to do a one-year funding of a project beyond our pay line to really kind of address key concerns in the proposal or to maintain a key expenditure, a cohort or research capacity that we want to kind of bridge into a new competitive application. So we did have an uptick as we funded more of those at a higher level for in 2024. And then all of our other activities within the RPG, that includes our R15 area and REAP awards, those kinds of things, sum up to about $15 million. Looking further into our RPG budget, so again, we're back to that $284 million total expenditure in RPGs, acknowledging that the majority of that, about 80% of that, or about 70%, sorry, of that is in non-competing awards. So those are our type 5s. We fund a R01 for a 5-year duration. Years 2 through 5 of that project are what we call non-competing awards. So that's $210 million of the $284 million, almost entirely in the R01 and the R35 mechanism. Excuse me. We also, but we did issue 165 competing awards for a total of about $75 million, broken down by the majority of that being in our unsolicited 123 or $58 million, and 42 of those in solicited research, just over $16 million. And that is spot on. We aim to have about 25% of our competing awards in solicited research annually. So we were spot on in fiscal 2024. These are the RFAs that we supported with that 25% of our budget that was in solicited research. That included our time-sensitive program, our ones, the final cohort of our ones awardees were funded last year, our Victor, Our partnership with the National Science Foundation for the Centers of Oceans and Human Health was funded last year. And then we had two more scientifically driven projects. The continuation of our partnership with NIA on understanding telomere biology and its underlying contributions to susceptibility and resilience was funded last year, as well as the psychiatric disorders program, which used both the R1 and the R21 mechanism, was funded last year. So looking back at, I presented our 7% pay line, which was new for fiscal year 2024. And as you can see, in 2022 and 2023, we did make significantly more pay line expenditures here in green, awards in green, with a 10% pay line as opposed to a 7% pay line. But that act of lowering our pay line to 7th percentile allowed us to increase our investment in our so-called raise to pay applications. So this is the opportunity for program staff with council's advice to look at what we call the gray zone applications at the 8th to 20th and maybe slightly beyond, to identify those projects that are key opportunities. They're things that particularly align with our strategic plan and our priorities as an institute, or they are our key investments that we see as being opportunities that justify a select pay for those projects. So we did see almost double the number of those than what we have had historically. The total funding, however, continues to be relatively flat, with plus or minus some random variation as our budgets and non-competing commitments change. But over time, our total investment in RPGs has been fairly flat. This is just changing the distribution between pay line and raise to pay. I know with the decision to end the ONCE program, there was concern from the community with our commitment to early stage investigators as well as new investigators. And so I wanted to present this data to you to show that our numbers here are actually fairly stable over the last 8 years. There's some variation just with the number of applications we get from early stage and new investigators, but our commitment as an institute to early stage and new investigators remains very high. And this is one of the factors that we do look at as a very high priority within our raise to pay considerations. As we were discussing our strategies entering into fiscal year 2025, we wanted to underscore our commitment to early stage investigators. So beginning with our October council, our first council round for funding in fiscal year 2025, we made a decision that while we were keeping, in October council, we were keeping our fixed 7th percentile pay line for investigator initiated projects. We did extend the early stage investigator pay line up to a 15th percentile, so more than double that of established investigators. And we have funded all ESI applications up to the 15th percentile for this year. So changing gears a little bit and looking at our the other third of our budget beyond the RPG budget, looking at how this is broken down. So our centers, as I said, we invested about $73 million in centers. This includes our P30s, as well as our health disparity centers and the health effects of weather centers are all included in this line. Our training budget was fairly flat for the last several years. It includes our institutional and individual Fs. both competing and non-competing awards. You can see the breakdown here. Your SBIR and SCTR. Again, this is a congressional mandate that we spend 5.1% of our budget here. Our other programs, other includes our career awards as well as those other research activities. Those are mostly infrastructure programs, as I said before. Looking over to our Superfund appropriations, as Rick said, they did get a slight cut in fiscal year 2024. So our total investment here was about $75 million, with our standard split between the SRP getting just a little bit under $50 million last year, and our worker training program with a $26 million investment from NAEHS. This does not include our pass-through from the Department of Energy of $9.2 million to support our radiation worker, our nuclear worker program through the UH4 activity mechanism is not included on this. That's not appropriated to NIHS, it's passed through from DOE. And you can see the breakdown between the different mechanisms here. The majority of the support going to the P42s within the Superfund Research Program and the U45s within the worker training, both of which also have to participate in the SBIR and spend the 5% of their budget on those activities. Changing over to look at fiscal year 2025, as Rick mentioned, this year has been a significant challenge with us, for us, both in shifting priorities, but also the delay in our holding our we call it February. It's actually our January council. Most institutes try to hold theirs in January. We've traditionally held ours in February. That was not held until April this year, so that resulted in a significant delay in getting awards out. But also with the delay in the peer review, many of our awards were significantly delayed in having their peer review done. So the major thing that I want to convey to the community right now is, particularly for those February and June council awards, we are committed to considering every application that we have gotten. We are not promising that we will be able to get every award out in fiscal year 2025. But we will consider every award. And if we are not able to get to those competing awards within 2025, we will consider them in 2026. We have tried to be as flexible as we possibly can. So as we get to the closed session and the consideration of our June Council awards, every application that has a completed summary statement is in the closed session today. Those that have not yet received their summary statements for the June Council round, we've already deferred those applications to our August Council. And those will most likely be considered in fiscal year 2026 as we get started with the new funding year. So acknowledging what Rick and I have already alluded to, our efforts in DERT have been severely impacted. We've lost, as I said, 30 staff members to date. The delay from our January council meeting to April meant that no competing awards for the February council had gone out yet. And the delays in managing HHS and NIH policies and procedures have delayed even some of our applications from the October council. So we have some applications from October that were supposed to be funded by February 1st start dates that have not yet been issued. We are working on those. We are trying to move those as quickly as we possibly can. And we will do everything that we can to get those awards out. As we approach the strategies to finish out fiscal year 2025, our top priority is getting our non-competing awards, our Type 5s, out before we address our competing awards to meet our existing obligations. We did make a decision with our February/April council meeting to streamline our own work and to change our approach from emphasizing raise to pay applications to emphasizing pay line. And so we have an intention to increase our pay line for February and June councils to 11th percentile for our investigator-initiated projects with a very minimal use of the raise to pay for those council rounds. And we have received approval from NIH to make use of multi-year funding for projects, both competing and non-competing awards for the remainder of fiscal year 2025. So we are exploring what are the opportunities for us to make a 4-year multi-year funding for various projects, looking at what is the budgetary impact of that, where is the impact of that on our own work, as well as the impact on funding of other projects. If we multi-year fund a project for 4 years, that means the other projects do not get funded. So we are looking strategically at all of those options. I do want to close out with on the fiscal 25 that this is a constantly changing landscape, and we recognize that this is a constantly changing landscape. The best way, so I have tried in the last few years to come and present various policy changes, things that the community needs to know to adapt. And frankly, there are just too many for me to cover in this presentation today. So I encourage everyone to regularly come to the grants.nih.gov website. This is your one-stop shop for all information relevant to grants funding at NIH. And if you go dig down a little bit, there's a page for policy and compliance with a subpage on notices of policy changes that lists all of the changes in grants policy for NIH. And you can also here, there's a link that I highlight to sign up for the NIH Guide to Grants and Contracts. That is a weekly email. You'll get it Friday afternoons that provides you all of the policy changes, all of the notices being released from NIH. It also includes all of the notices of funding opportunity. So we have now a path for institutes to develop and release notices of funding opportunity and to present concepts. So we will have a concept approval this morning to bring for your consideration. Institutes are developing and releasing RFAs and other funding opportunities right now. I do want to call attention to a couple of the more recent policy announcements that I think are actually things that are good news. So the first is, again, continuing on that priority of early stage investigators. NIH recognized that the delays in funding have impacted early stage investigators' eligibility for their ESI consideration. So this is an automatic extension of eligibility for anyone who would lose their ESI eligibility in fiscal year 2025. They are automatically being granted ESI status for the October council round. So for applications being submitted in October for ESI status. There's also a side note to this. that for individuals who had ESI status, whose grants were terminated, those are also being extended, and individuals with K awards that were terminated. There's 70 of them across NIH that they have had their K eligibility extended as well, and NIH OER is reaching out to those individuals directly. There's also some good news for our trainees, as Daryl was asking about that in the teams before we got started here. The NIH did on May 16th announce our stipend levels for 2025, which does give our trainees a small bump up in their stipend as well as the associated fees. So there is some good news in these policy announcements as well as some changes in practice. Then the last theme that I have is to highlight just a few DERT activities and some of our grantee highlights. So as everyone knows, there was a communication and travel hold that was put in place with the change of administration. That was lifted, and we were able to have staff do just a few things this spring. So Mike Humble and a colleague from NIEID hosted a symposium on immune development in early life at the American Association of Immunologists annual meeting in early May. And Ravi hosted a session on microplastics and associated health effects at the American Thoracic Society conference also in May. And then we were able to hold one grantee meeting this spring. Our worker training program held their spring workshop on preventing chronic disease in workers virtually in May. So we're starting to get back to a little bit of business as usual in DERT. We were planning on having a meeting of our Superfund research program. We've made the decision to delay that so that we can spend our time working on trying to get the grants out the door. And finally, I want to highlight some good news. We were a little surprised in January to receive notification that two of our I think future stars, current and future stars, frankly, in the environmental health sciences community had been selected to receive the President's Early Career Award for Science and Engineering. So congratulations to Paloma Beamer from the University of Arizona and Kim Gowdy from the Ohio State University on their recognition as PK scholars. This is a huge accomplishment, and huge congratulations go out to Paloma and Kim. With that, I will wrap up, and I'm happy to take any questions from the members of council. Daryl.
Thank you very much, David. Wow, that was pretty comprehensive. But one of the strategies that our Enterprise for Research, Knowledge and Innovation, ERIC, they call it here, has been doing is projecting out, looking at projections as it relates to stratifying, for an example, the different levels that we could end up at regarding F&A and so forth, even stipends for kids. And so to that end, is NIEHS able to say anything about, in the aggregate, with regard to these, we could not really appeal. Okay, yeah, appeals, yeah. That's where I want to go with that. Disputes, appeals. I mean, are you able to say anything there yet? I guess that's the director's question, but I ask you, David.
Yeah, we're really not able to comment on those,
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Well, my point is,
sorry, Daryl.
You
No,
did
no,
touch
that's
on the
fine.
FNA question. So let me just very briefly address that. All of the
Okay.
awards that we are issuing right now, we are issuing at the negotiated rates or at the mechanism appropriate rates. So, for instance, our fellowships and training grants that have a mechanism specific rate.
Okay, great. The reason why I bring that up is that in the director's comments about what's going to be happening next week, and we're right in the middle, right up there on the hill. It would be encouraging to know that the institute, this IC, is ready and prepared, and will go in armed with data regarding as in to make your argument, and so that's the only reason I bring that up. And I'm sure you all have done that. I guess I'm more concerned with the impact. Let's say everything does go over to AHA. What might be the impacts on the various divisions there in the institute, for an example. And have we thought about that yet? And are we prepared?
So, Rick,
Daryl,
if I can defer that question to you.
Maybe I can address that, Daryl. Let me reassure you, I've been spending a lot of my time addressing those issues. And, I mentioned a few key people that I've been able to discuss the work that we do at NAEHS. I've been, tirelessly working to get the word out. I've been working very intensely with our NIH director, our NIH deputy director, the chief operating officer, anyone at the HHS, and I'm hoping to get some time, with the current Secretary Kennedy to really explain what it is that we do and how we can help to implement on the MAHA agenda. So rest assured, I've been working tirelessly on that effort, and we have every mechanism that we have to try to get knowledge out to the appropriate people. We're doing that, but as you realize, as a federal employee and the director of NIEHS, I'm not allowed to actually get in front of Congress and to advocate for specific things. But we're using every mechanism that we have to provide awareness and knowledge of the fabulous work that we do. So just rest assured, I've been, well, as David and other members of the SLC know, I've been pretty active on this front. And quite frankly, it's easy to be active because I am passionate about the work that we do. I'm passionate about the work that you do at The Ohio State University and other organizations across the United States. So I'm hoping that we can just all get back to our normal business. But we need to hear where NIH, the Congress weighs in relative to future plans for the NIH.
Thank you.
Okay, David, I'm not seeing any other hands. Are there any other questions? David's presentation was pretty comprehensive, as Daryl indicated. Thank you, David, for that great presentation.
Thank you, Rick.
Lots of things going on.
And we are
David,
actually pretty much on time to move into our break.
Right. And I just need to apologize that I will be actually engaging in some of those conversations, Daryl, that I was just referring to between the 11 to 12 o'clock hour. I apologize that I'll have to extract myself from council, but I will be back at about noon, or we'll be back in time to launch the closed session this afternoon. So, David, I'll turn it. Well, we take a break now, and then you will have a chance then to introduce our presenters for our council.
Yep.
Concept
and I will be acting both as executive secretary and chair once we reconvene. So we'll come back at 11 o'clock promptly for the presentation of our concept. So enjoy your extra 2 minutes of break. Welcome back. I hope everybody had a good break. So it's my pleasure to bring to you today. Our next action. So as I mentioned in my presentation, we now do have the ability to bring concepts and develop RFAs and other funding opportunities. And so we wanted to bring to you today a concept for a new program to assess the impact of environmental exposures on gut-brain signaling and neurological conditions. So this is developed by staff in our Genes, Environment, and Health branch, Annika Zerlinga and John Hollander. Who will be presenting an overview of the concept. Again, for council members, the written concept is available in your electronic council book, and I think also a copy of the slides there. So with that, I will turn it over to Annika, who I think will get us started.
That's right. Thank you, David. Hello, council members, senior leadership, and everyone else tuning in this morning. We thank you for your attention. It is my pleasure to kick off our presentation, which will outline why intentional support of the connection among environmental exposures, the microbiome, and the gut-brain axis would be strategic for our institute and reap benefits for the broader fields of environmental health sciences and neuroscience. Since this content crosses multiple disciplines and niches, and particularly since it's been a while since we've covered microbiome science at Council, we'll spend some time introducing microbiome concepts and the gut-brain axis. And I'll overview recent discussions and workshops from the last few years that ultimately brought us to this concept. John will take over to describe some enticing case studies that highlight why the gut-brain axis and the gut microbiome can transform the way we approach neurological outcomes at this institute. And finally, we'll lay out objectives, goals, and examples. So put simply, the human microbiome comprises bacteria, archaea, viruses, and eukaryotes residing within and outside of our bodies. Distinctly different sites on the human body are their own discrete microbiome, such that the skin, lung, oral, or gut are different entities, which befits the interface between host pathways and the interface with the environment for all of those niches. In host homeostasis, microbiomes play immensely important roles in nutrient metabolism, in regulating host immunity, and in biotransformation of other exogenous chemicals. So we know that early development is a crucial time for establishing what will become a rather robust and steady gut microbiome throughout life. So a lot of research emphasis has been placed on microbiome in the context of developmental disorders or origins of chronic disease, or in the predisposition to certain diseases. But there are circumstances that can alter the state of the microbiome during lifestyle changes, life stages, or in the context of pathologies. Of all the human microbiomes, the gut microbiome is the richest ecosystem and prevents an invaluable interconnectedness with the host. And we'll be focusing on that moving forward. In large part due to the investment that the NIH put into the Human Microbiome Project, which launched nearly 20 years ago, there's been a shift gradually with leaps in pertinent research questions and applications related to microbiome science. So from early characterization of the human microbiome and resolving interactions between microbiome and host, to elucidating key mechanisms, developing microbial-based biomarkers, and then even interventions for certain diseases. So it's important to note that evolution of these research questions was enabled by a concurrent evolution of the way we evaluate or measure the microbiome. So studies have evolved beyond DNA-based approaches, which are still immensely valuable, and that answers the questions of which microbes are there and what can they do, to evaluating microbial products through RNA, protein, and metabolite-based approaches. So this is typically seen as increasing applicability to human health. So what are they doing actively? We're evaluating the entities that are directly engaging with host pathways. And they most certainly do engage with host pathways. As I mentioned earlier, microbiomes maintain host health and are also implicated in certain disease pathogeneses. So this illustration on the left has examples of both sides of the coin. So on the top panel here, microbial metabolites engage in anti-inflammatory and immune responses, but can also find direct targets contributing to disease. So introducing the question of environmental exposures adds layers of consideration. So on the right here is the paradigm for how environmental health sciences might consider microbiome. So chemicals may directly impact the community or composition of the gut microbiome, which in turn has the capacity to biotransform a chemical into more or less toxic forms. The microbiome, in its homeostatic or altered state, then engages with host pathways, just as the chemical, in its parent or metabolite state, has its own target pathways within and outside of the gut for the host. We're also concerned with then prevention and amelioration of the negative effects of chemicals, such as in discovery and development of strategies to offset toxic effects, or in the development of biomarkers to predict onset or severity of exposure-related diseases. So I hope as we move forward, we can consider this entire paradigm and unlock some of the promise microbiome holds, especially in this sphere here. And in fact, since the gut microbiome facilitates and contributes to inter-individual variability, there's an application here in precision environmental health. So precision environmental health, which is highlighted in the 2025 NIH strategic plan, as Rick outlined earlier, it observes that personalized exposure response relationships can be characterized through multi-systems approaches to predict risk or develop effective interventions. So you're sensing a theme here, I hope. Particularly with the evolution of microbiome analyses that I described earlier, microbiome and microbial products hold the potential to serve as molecular signatures for biomarkers. So that could be exposure, disease state, or therapeutic efficacy, or even therapeutic targets in their own right for interventions. And we'll discuss some of those approaches later in this presentation. All right, so now that we understand the interface between microbiome and exposures, and we understand why that would be critical to precision environmental health, we'll delve more into a specific area of health outcomes, introducing a crucial, well-recognized interface between the gut and host pathways, and that's the gut-brain axis. So there are many well-defined pathways of interconnectedness between the gastrointestinal system and the nervous system. The gut-brain axis facilitates communication through various means, such as direct stimulation of the vagus nerve, mediation of the neuroimmune system, and through GI production of neuroactive microbial metabolites. Neuroinflammation also plays a role in the progression of neurological disorders, and much of that can be traced back to the gut as well. Mechanistic studies in germ-free animal models indicate that the microbiome does contribute to a healthy development and maintenance of the brain and neurological pathways. The gut-brain axis importantly interfaces with other systems, especially when we consider the full exposure gut-brain axis, or the full paradigm that we've been walking you through, for which the liver, for example, might play a role in xenobiotic metabolism, or the lung, for example, might play a role in exposure. So compelled by this model and others, there have been a series of workshops that are directly relevant to this discussion that I want to briefly go over. So these two workshops were hosted by cross-divisional faculty at NAEHS. The first one on the top here was pretty general, the impact of environmental exposures on the microbiome and human health. It was widely attended and addressed all manner of topics related to microbiome and toxicology. The sessions focused on human health outcomes, exposure, ADME processes, and methods. It was designed to bring together environmental health scientists seeking to branch out into the microbiome space with microbiologists seeking to branch out into the toxicology space. And I think we really had a lot of successful conversations and collaborations from that one. The follow-up workshop was smaller and more focused, specifically to examine the gut-brain axis. The design of this workshop examined evidence for the role of microbiome and exposures across the lifespan when viewed through the lens of neurodevelopment and neurodegeneration. Breakout discussions were more specific to the promise of microbial interventions, use of new models and methods, and the importance of considering life stage when framing research questions. And in the same year, John was on a group co-hosting this workshop alongside colleagues at NINDS and NIDDK that explored the gut-brain axis linked to Parkinson's disease specifically. So preventers went into more in-depth discussion about gut-brain communication pathways in neurodegeneration and ventured more into clinical considerations, such as coordinating care for gastrointestinal dysfunction and how signaling along the GI tract, inclusive of the microbiome, could serve as therapeutic targets. And there was a meeting summary that came out of this workshop that you can see on the right. So all told, there were common themes discussed and needs that rose to the surface across the workshops. Yes, environmental exposures hold the potential to perturb the gut-brain axis, and we knew that obviously going into these workshops, but there's still a lot to explore in terms of mechanism of communication across these three nodes of study: exposures, gut, and brain. So leveraging the right models for these questions is very important. There's been a lot of innovation in neurological and neurotoxicity models and those used for microbiome studies. So one common thread was, of course, how to balance strengths of these models and what information each can yield against the limitations and the rising cost. Lifespan, as I mentioned, was a common thread, developmental origins of disease and aging, both providing crucial context, and the necessity of collaboration. It takes several experts coming together to provide robust study design and data analysis, as well as sound interpretation of the studies. And this is particularly important when we consider the ultimate goal of translation. So, if we want to develop gut-focused detection, prevention, and intervention strategies to decrease risk, slow progression, or even reverse neurological conditions, we need to answer some of these underlying questions and figure out how to leverage the right approaches for the right questions. And with that, I will turn it over to John for some examples.
Good morning, everyone. And thank you, Annika, for a really wonderful introduction to how important the gut brain signaling pathway is in health, as well as the workshops that we have conducted to think about the gaps and opportunities in the field. So what I want to do is transition to a few examples of highlighting the importance of the gut-brain connection, specifically in neurological conditions. And so what we're doing here is first going to highlight Parkinson's disease. And this is a disease that was first described by James Parkinson in the early 19th century. It's a progressive neurodegenerative disorder. It affects approximately 1 million people in the United States and is typically diagnosed after the age of 55. Unfortunately, there are no known treatments to cure or slow progression of the disease. But we know quite a bit about the pathophysiology of it. And so on the right-hand side, you can see a pen image from a normal and healthy patient and one who was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. And what you can see is striatal reductions, mostly prominent in the posterior and dorsal putamen of the brain, so reductions of dopamine. And then that also, with that reduction, you also see the increase in eosinophilic inclusion bodies or Lewy bodies. Those are basically aggregates of alpha-synuclein in nerve cells and in neurons. And you see that commonly in patients diagnosed with Parkinson's. Along with this pathophysiology, you have several symptoms, which are motor and non-motor in nature. Some of those motor symptoms are involuntary movement, resting tremor, muscle rigidity, and gait postural disturbances. And that's accompanied by several autonomic impairments that include dysfunction in digestive systems. So patients report issues with constipation, as well as sleep disturbances. There's been a number of studies out there that have examined the etiology of Parkinson's disease, which include both genetic and environmental risk factors. So some of the genetic factors include mutations in Parkin and LRRK2 genes, as well as environmental factors, which include metal exposure, air pollutants, agrochemicals, and physical head trauma. Next slide, please. So What's been incredibly important over the last few years, in particular, is there's been a paradigm shift in the field and the way we think about the etiology of Parkinson's disease, and specifically how environmental toxicants can impact disease progression. And this figure was taken by a wonderful review by Ray Dorsey, who's a clinician scientist, as well as Brianna De Miranda, who is a current NIHS-supported Outstanding New Environmental Scientist, or R1 awardee, where they describe both a brain-first and body-first approach to thinking about etiology of disease. In the brain-first paradigm, it's postulated that air pollutants are directly inhaled, and the pollutants cross the blood-brain barrier, and the initial pathology begins right in the olfactory bulb of the brain and continues from there. And this is in contrast to a body-first approach, where a toxicant is ingested. It might be a food that is laced with a pesticide, for example, or maybe drinking water that might have a metal contaminant that's ingested. And what you see is pathology beginning in the gut, which can trigger alpha-synuclein misfolding, and it works its way through the brainstem via different pathways, including the vagus nerve. I really can't highlight this idea of thinking about body first, this perspective enough. And the reason why is because Parkinson's disease has a long prodromal period. That's a period of time before you see diagnosis in your 50s. And if with this body first approach, what suggests is that the gut might be an important early indicator or window of thinking about pathology disease years or potentially decades before it's diagnosed later in life. So really an important way to think about the etiology of Parkinson's and considering the gut-brain connection. Next slide. So, that's in theory, but I want to really emphasize that the scientific literature really, particularly from the fundamental basic scientist literature, really support this body-first concept. So this is a study by Wang and colleagues where they injected paraquat, which is a known herbicide that is linked to Parkinson's disease. They injected this in mice at a 15 milligram per kilogram dose twice a week, 4 to 6, 8 weeks, or saline controls. And what they found is the typical type of locomotor effects that you see with paraquat or any kind of substance that would have Parkinson's-like outcomes. So what they saw is decreased locomotion, decreased grip strength. They also found that paraquat dose impacted gut microbiota diversity abundance. So if you go into this paper, you can see all the different microbiota groupings that came up from paraquat dose. But I really wanted to emphasize in this figure, however, is the damage that you see in the digestive tract. So on the right-hand side, the top right image, you can see the general morphology of the colon wall. What we find is that with longer paraquat exposure time, you begin to see intestinal mucosal damage gradually increase, epithelial cells gradually sparsely arranged, as well as the increased presence of lymphocytes. Along with this damage in the colon wall in that bottom right figure, is a heat map of relative expression levels of inflammatory markers in the intestinal tract. So you see increased expression of inflammatory markers like CD11B, IL-1 beta, and INOS that increase with the dose of paraquat. Now, along with these changes, going back to when we introduced Parkinson's disease in the outset, you also see those key pathological markers, both in the gut and in the digestive tract, as well as the brain. That includes increases of that protein that we discussed, alpha-synuclein, in the colon, as well as the midbrain, with increasing dose of paraquat. And you also see the decrease in expression of tyrosine hydroxylase, which is a rate limiting enzyme of dopamine synthesis and is a major molecular agent in determining dopamine levels. So you see that decrease in striatal dopamine in the brain. So collectively, what we're seeing is that a pesticide can be linked with both gut and brain changes in a Parkinson's disease model. Next slide, please. So that's with, we're beginning to see a really important connection with regard to how the gut-brain signaling acts in chronic neurogenic conditions like Parkinson's disease. But what's really important to realize is that there are other neurological conditions where this gut-brain connection seems to be important as well. And that includes in neurodevelopment and as well as environmentally induced mental health or psychiatric disorders. So in this study, this is done by Megan Horton, Bob Wright, Manisha Rohr, and Shauna Eggerts. They leveraged data from a well-characterized pediatric longitudinal birth cohort in Mexico and of 112 women. And they measured 11 different metals in maternal whole blood samples in the second and third trimesters of pregnancies. And they tracked both gut microbial abundancies as well as depression symptoms in 9 to 11-year-old children. And using both microbial and chemical exposure analysis, which combines machine learning into a regression framework, they estimated these associations between metal microbial cliques or groupings and depression. And the results they found was that in the children that had they had a unique microbial signature, which is high abundance of Bacteroides fragilis and Faecalibacterium prausnitzii in children, and mothers that were had high zinc in the second trimester and low cobalt in the third trimester. And this association was linked to increased depression in children 11 to 13 years old. Next slide, please. So the beauty of looking at gut-brain intervention or gut-brain associations is that the gut is very much amenable to therapeutic treatments. And so in this slide, we're showcasing several common therapeutic interventions. This includes probiotics that can directly modulate the microbiome and inhibit the pro-inflammatory response. This includes fecal microbiota transplantation. So you might be able to transfer fecal bacteria from a healthy donor. And this has been shown in the clinical literature to be really a wonderful strategy in decreasing symptoms of neurological diseases, as well as working in decreasing intestinal inflammation. Then there's also been quite a bit of work in dietary modifications. So we know is Mediterranean diet, intermittent fasting, for example, can have a neuroprotective effect, as well as anti-inflammatory effect. Collectively, these different interventions really suggest that they might be really a wonderful strategy to treat or delay neurological disorders by modulating gut microbiota. Now, unfortunately, there are currently very limited studies that have utilized these types of interventions targeting the gut for chemically induced neurological outcomes, hence the reason why Annika and I are presenting today. But in the next slide, I really wanted to highlight an exciting example of how a changed microbiome can have a profound impact on exposure-induced neurological outcomes. So this is a study from Stacy Bilbo and Carolyn Smith's group, where they suggest that the gut microbiome can be an important modulator for exposure-induced neurodevelopment disorders such as autism. And here the researchers exposed pregnant mice to diesel exhaust as well as stress by altering nesting conditions. Then they administered tests to the offspring to measure sociability, anxiety, and repetitive behavior. And the team did identify social deficits, alterations in microglia, and changes in dopamine circuitry in males, but not female pups, of exposed mothers. Now, these findings in the male mice are particularly intriguing because given the increased prevalence of males diagnosed with autism compared to females. But a highlight that I really wanted to emphasize here is this intervention component, which is a cross-fostering experiment shown in those figures below. At birth, all pups were switched to be raised by foster parents, which may or may not have that history of diesel exhaust stress condition. Now, while the investigators found absolutely or no difference in maternal care compared to controls, so they had measured, this included measures of time spent in the nest, grooming, licking, maternal care measures. What they found is that despite no differences in that, that the gut microbial composition of the pups shifted to resemble that of the foster mother. So that's in that first figure on the bottom left. Intriguingly, as noted by those aqua-colored bars in the figure, mice born to exposed mothers had prevented social deficits, which is that middle figure, as well as microglia alterations, which is that figure on the right. Now, protection against these microglia alterations is especially important, given that microglia are primary immune cells in the brain, and they're also involved in synaptic pruning, which is critical for healthy brain development. Now, collectively, these findings suggest that the gut microbiome is an important modulator of both social behavior and microglia in males, and may be possible therapeutic target for neurodevelopment conditions such as autism. Next slide. So, given the potential role of both gut-brain, the access, as well as these therapeutic strategies, which can have a profound impact on people living with these neurological conditions, Annika and I are proposing a new program to expand and leverage the role that gut microbiome access for improved detection, prevention, and intervention strategies for environmental exposure-induced neurological conditions. Next slide. And so what we wanted to do was give different examples of different types of studies. This is just examples, in terms of what we potentially would see in terms of projects coming in that we solicited for this program. The first is we can envision the use of Apple model systems to elucidate mechanisms linking gut perturbations and environmental exposures to neurological endpoints. So, for example, we might see researchers use in vitro strategies looking at gut barrier function. We know that leaky gut, for example, environmental exposures can affect the barrier integrity of the gut, and that certainly could be an avenue of exploration. Another example that we might see is researchers may look at characterization of neuroactive microbial metabolites. This could include monoamine neurotransmitters, such as the release of how environmental exposures impact the release of dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, important neurotransmitters that we know are critically related to both healthy development as well as neurological disorders. And the final 2 points, I think, are very much characteristic of the program that Annika and I want to develop, which is the identification of those microbial signatures. So if we can identify what those groupings are that would make a person either more vulnerable or resilient or protected against neurological disease risk, that could have a really important impact on people's lives. And the second part of this is, once you've identified those groupings, as we discussed earlier, the identification or piloting potential intervention strategies or targets is a critical step in both potential decreasing risk, slowing down, or stopping the progression of these neurological conditions. So with that, wanted to thank all of you for your attention, and a special thanks to our council reviewers, Doctors Daryl Hood and Catherine Hoyo, who have graciously agreed to be reviewers for this concept. So I'm going to turn the proverbial mic over to Dr. Hood, who's going to give input on the concept, and from there we'll open it to general question and answer. Thank you. Dr. Hood, so you're up.
Great. Thank you very much, John. That was astounding. I think back 20 years when Pat Levitt and the group there at Vanderbilt were looking into some of the same types of experiments. So I'll have to look at that, the references in that paper as soon as we get done. However, certainly in terms of scientific premise and significance, yes, this concept, and my partner is Catherine Hoyo, so she'll be speaking on a couple of issues. So we'll just go through briefly go through our written review, which should be posted here shortly if it's not already there. But as I was saying, John and Annika, awesome, excellent. There is, in fact, an emerging recognition of the gut microbiome as a central mediator in terms of these environmental exposure-induced outcomes in overall neurological health. And so, by focusing on this gut-brain axis, this concept, very, very clearly is going to be able to bridge microbiome research as we know it with toxicological and neuroscientific frameworks to emphasize the mechanistic understanding that, of course, as it relates to how environmental factors and variables might influence neurodevelopment and neurodegeneration in the gut. As it relates to the overall scope and goals of the program, excellent once again. This life course or life stage, it depends on what silo you're in. That's also from conception to death. I mean, that's where we should be looking. And this is very, very consistent with a number of such approaches in other chronic disease states. I love the target conditions. I mean, you indicated, and they're going to span a spectrum of neurological disorders, as you indicated in your presentation. Parkinson's research, certainly using that as an exemplar to some of those that are less or more foundational. That would be something like schizophrenia, right? And so that scope includes the development of models, as Anika indicated, novel biomarkers, precision tools, and most importantly, these therapeutic strategies, which have to do with the modulation of the microbiome. And so collaborative interdisciplinary approaches will be on point and prioritized so that, we can then, this concept can then tackle these multifaceted biological interactions that really undergird and underlie toxin-induced or toxin-driven, I should say, neurophysiological outcomes. Okay, and I'll turn it over to Catherine to talk a little bit more about this concept in terms of the alignment with mission. Catherine?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Donald. That was an excellent presentation. I do want to commend the Annika and John for this program concept. I thought it was, as Darrell just said, it's really on point. It presented a highly aligned, it's very aligned with NAEHS mission to understand how environmental exposures affect human health. It specifically supports the research areas of emphasis number 2, which is precision environmental health, and number 3, which is the mechanistic biology and toxicology from the NAEHS 2005-2009 strategic plan. The gut-brain axis, positioned as sensitive interface between environmental agents and neurological health, provides a novel and tractable model for exploring exposure disease pathways. So by investigating in the initiative, NAEHS reinforces its commitment to mechanistic insights, protective toxicology, and intervention strategies that are rooted in environmental determinants of disease. Ultimately, this would enhance public health outcomes and prevention strategies. With respect to the potential impact to the academy, this program concept also has the potential to catalyze transformative research across the environmental health spectrum, neuroscience, and microbiome communities. It will foster new interdisciplinary collaborations and attract investigators from clinical neuroscience to microbiology to systems biology and public health. Academic institutions may benefit through increased funding, training opportunities, and the development of novel translational pipelines. The initiative could position academic centers as innovative hubs in neurotoxicology and microbiome science, and this will ultimately encourage the next generation of scientists to pursue integrated approaches. We also think that the tools and data sets developed under this program will likely enhance academic research capabilities and support long-term advancements in environmental neurobiology. So I'll turn it over to Darrell, who will talk about the the alignment and the concordance with our the Administration for a Healthy America goal.
Thank you very much, Catherine and John and Annika. We certainly want to commend you. You heard us speaking this morning a little bit about AHA, right? So this concept clearly aligns with broader NIH goals, as well as some of the Administration for a Healthy America goals as we know it today, right? That would be the fact that it promotes integrative, cross-disciplinary science, as well as precision health. And I think we're moving towards more of a convergent science approach, as we refer to it now. This concept also complements NIH efforts, in particular, with regard to mental health, aging, neurology, digestive diseases, with kind of a holistic focus on the neurological disorders that might be linked to gut health and environmental exposure. So yes, it does support the Administration for Healthy America's agenda by addressing these upstream determinants of neurological disease and developing preventative strategies, right? By fostering health equity through exposure-focused research and potentially personalized interventions, this initiative enhances all of the national strategies for disease prevention, health promotion, and resilience, Annika, against environmental health threats, for sure. And Catherine, did you want to say something else or move to discussion?
I wanted to add some considerations for Annika and John on what you may consider to strengthen this. I mean, it's a really good concept and it was well presented, but we thought that you might want to consider extending this environmental exposure, which currently it's really focused on chemical exposures. Beyond that, to include the non-chemical exposures, such as social and other physical stresses that are non-chemical. This is directly in line with NIH's strategic goal of evaluating the totality of exposures, the exposome. Additionally, from the perspective of the research enterprise, the academy in the United States, this expanded exposome approach may also accelerate interdisciplinary research efforts across HHS and catalyze discovery to improve human health. I mean, evidence that has been accumulated that you actually very eloquently described, it does support the chemical aspects of this, but there is also some evidence now that supports the non-chemical aspects of this on the microbial diversity at a minimum and the abundance. So the question is this something you're willing to consider? Is this something that you were that you deliberately want to stay out of, given its complexity? And if so, I would really like to. We wanted to hear your thoughts on that, maybe.
Yeah. But highly recommend the concept.
Annika, you want to go first or me? I don't want to talk over you, so I'd love to respond.
I'll go first. Thank you both so much for your careful consideration and review, and for pulling out and so eloquently stating what we already see and hopefully everyone else sees as the value of this science for the scientific community, NIEHS, NIH, AHA, and the general public. So I just wanted to comment a couple on the strengths. So one, you mentioned, Daryl, how focusing on the gut-brain axis as kind of an example of the broader promise of microbiome. Spot on. I have been overseeing the microbiome portfolio for several years, and this is very much how I view that too. I think we can see what the next step could be for environmental health sciences and microbiome science, and I think leveraging what we already know about the interactions between exposures and the gut-brain axis is a way to showcase that more fully. So really very much looking forward to seeing how that pans out. And then secondly, Dr. Hoyo, so attracting investigators from clinical science, absolutely. I think in a broader sense, this example will improve recognition of the importance of environmental health sciences in clinical spaces, which is something we've been endeavoring to do for many years. So that holds a lot of promise. And excellent suggestions for chemical exposures and non-chemical stressors, both being important. So I think our third example from Dr. Bilbo's lab, where she has the model where it's not just diesel exhaust, it's not just maternal stress, it's both combined that are serving as the model for autism in mice. And so I think it's very clear that there's a lot of contributors to disease progression. I think to be responsive to this type of opportunity, they would have to have whatever we are currently defining for NAEHS's mission. So chemical stressors will have to be, central, but by all means, we are interested in other contributors to disease progression. And in terms of the broader exposome approaches, actually example 2 that John went through, that machine learning algorithm was developed as part of their exposomics approaches, if I'm not mistaken, this mixed metals. So I think these are going to work in tandem for sure. I don't know, it wouldn't necessarily be a requirement, which is why we didn't tag that part of the strategic plan. I think precision environmental health, that makes sense. Exposomics is probably going to be around in the applications that would be solicited from this, especially just in the way of all of the techniques that have been developed in this space. John, do you have anything to add?
Just add a couple points. I mean, just reiterating exactly what Annika just said about, we want to be inclusive in terms of non-chemical exposure. We know things like psychosocial stress and dietary factors. There are other factors environmental factors that certainly impact the gut and neurological outcomes. And so, as long as they do certainly have a mission relevant exposure, we would certainly welcome the opportunity to solicit applications that go beyond the chemical exposures within the mission. The second point that Dr. Hoyo mentioned, I do want to kind of just elaborate a little further on, is you mentioned, looking beyond Parkinson's disease, looking beyond chronic diseases with this concept. And that's something that Annika and I were really intentional in doing and thinking about neurological conditions more broadly, because we know that comorbidity or the presence of more than one neurological condition is very common in the population. And, in the fact that, we have different areas of maturity in terms of what we know about the gut microbiome cliques or groupings in an area like Parkinson's disease, and less so in areas in mental health and psychiatric disorders. So I think we're really excited about sort of the impact of this on multiple both chronic and acute or neurodevelopment conditions with this concept. I'll stop there.
Thank you.
So any other questions or comments from council? And Maria, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you so much. Such a terrific project. So you want to look at multiple exposures, and I'm also thinking about whether that would feed into cumulative exposures. The idea that it's just not one thing or another, but there can be, a cumulative impact of all these exposures. Could you speak a bit to that?
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Honestly, at this point, I think it probably depends on the research question. I think though we have a defined box, there's still a lot of different questions that researchers could be posing. So if there is, information about multiple exposures contributing to a neurological outcome, and it made sense for, the role of the gut in, translating that exposure to outcome scenario, that would be fine.
Great. Thanks so much. I'm just thinking about practical application down the line and how the idea of cumulative exposures for populations is so key and something that's very important to bring to the attention of policymakers.
Thank you.
And Gokhan.
Thank you. Thank you for the nice presentation. As a pulmonologist, I appreciate lung being mentioned in terms of exposure, but I think I would like to make a comment about the role of lungs besides the exposure. As you mentioned, lung exposure may change the gut, may actually, when we inhale particles, we not only inhale them to the lung, a lot of them actually ingest it. And we and others have shown that the exposure to particles lead to inflammation in the gut, increased permeability, as well as changes in the gut microbiome. There is an association which has been repeatedly shown in humans between exposure to air pollution and colitis, IBD flares, and appendicitis. But lung, similar to the gut, brain axis actually has direct interaction between with the gut as well as the brain. There is a well-known lung-gut axis, and there is also a well-known brain-lung axis. So lungs not only may affect the gut and then indirectly affect the brain, but as was mentioned in terms of mechanisms, how gut may affect the brain, lung through activation of vagal nerve, through hypopituitary axis, HPA axis, hypothalamus pituitary axis, can lead to release of catecholamines, which can directly affect the brain, as well as its own microbiome. It's well known the PM changes the lung microbiome. There's an association between infections and neurologic diseases. So, it was mentioned, Catherine mentioned that, we need to maybe consider being more inclusive, consider social stress, etc. But I think if the goal is to study the effect of microbiome on neurologic disorders, I think we may need to consider including lung microbiome as well, because the lung, like I said, not only affects the gut, but it can also directly affect the brain through its microbiome and other changes in the lung.
100%. So we actually had a slide specifically on that axis, and we are without question the lung microbiome. I'd also add the liver as well as there are other microbiomes outside that certainly impact the gut and is signaling into the brain. And certainly we be inclusive of those different strategies. I think the excitement that we had of focusing this particular initiative on the gut and making that sort of central is the fact that it's so amenable to treatment and these prevention strategies that we discussed. And so, that's sort of, we thought sort of the beauty of this initiative isn't just the characterization, the mechanistic, characterization, how the brain is, the signaling pathways in terms of neurologic outcomes, but that treatment intervention component is a key characteristic of the program that Annika and I are hoping to develop. And so I think that's I don't know if Annika wants to add anything to it beyond that, but we certainly in background information we were thinking of including more discussion of those additional systems, but we really wanted the focus to kind of maintain on that gut-brain connection, realizing that there's certainly other systems that are impacting that signaling pathway.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, John. And, we're not limiting the exposure or the health outcome here. So there are going to be research questions for which other systems are incredibly vital to the research question. And so we're not limiting any other systems out necessarily. We were just emphasizing gut microbiome here for the modifiability.
Any
And
other
so I
questions?
guess,
Go ahead, Gerald.
no, I was just going to say, from Catherine and I, certainly we would encourage council to approve this concept clearance so that it enables NAEHS to lead a novel and timely initiative at the intersection of microbiome science, environmental exposures, and neurological health. That's all I was going to say to get it in the books, Mr. Chairman.
Right.
Yeah.
Thanks,
And
Daryl.
any other
Yes.
questions or comments from council, please? If not, may I request a motion to approve this concept, which will allow us to continue to develop this through appropriate mechanisms.
So moved.
Thank you, Maria. And a second? Daryl, is that a second?
No, it's not. Somebody else second it,
Second.
Thank you, Gokin.
Thank you very much, Gokin. Yeah.
And if we can have council members vote those in favor of approving, please raise your hand.
Okay.
Excellent. That looks like unanimity. Thank you all very much. And
Thank
since Rick is back, I will turn it over to him to adjourn our open session of council.
Great. Well, thank you all. Those were really great comments and questions. I think Maria's comment about the cumulative exposures is especially relevant. That's really important. So I wish I had better news for you today, but hopefully you have a better sense of where we stand. And again, I just want to express my appreciation to all of the staff here at NAEHS who are working again tirelessly to get the grants out the door and get them into your laboratories and your offices. I also want to thank all members of council. I mean, you have been terrific. You're willing to work with us. We got changing schedules, and so just thank you all. So we're all in this together, and as I've said to our staff, I believe in them. I believe in all of you. We have a wonderful mission, and we can be doing incredible things that really promote human health. So let's see, Catherine, I see that your hand is up. Is that legacy, or do you have a new comment?
No, it's legacy.
Okay. Okay. Well, with that, I think I'm looking at the clock. It's looking like it's about time for some lunch. So I will use my virtual gavel and pound, 3 times, David, to officially close the open session.